And our essence, our uniqueness as a human being would be our hand, and our ego covers that with a glove so that we make sure that that essence fits into the culture and society and social structure around us. This is kind of a personal topic, talking about authenticity and purpose and meaning in our life. And I know I'm not expecting any of you to be having to ask questions face to face. So please feel comfortable to use the chat. So any questions that go into the chat, you're completely anonymous, and that'll help stir up the conversation, and Alex will be your voice. Okay. So authenticity. What does that mean to you when you hear that word? Is it something that we are all the time? Or is it something that we're working through towards in our life? It's something that we're getting in touch with. From my perspective, in my mid 60s, I feel it's something that comes from basically reparenting ourselves. After having two grandchildren very recently, two new grandchildren, and holding a little baby and just looking at how open. And by the way, I want to just put a shout out to Alex, because Alex and Hannah just had a baby less than a week ago.
Thank you, Kirk. Thanks, everyone.
So Alex knows what I'm talking about. When you hold a brand new being in your hands and you look at them and you see how open they are, how non-judgmental they are, how untainted they are by any kind of conditioning, cultural, societal, I think of that as our authentic state. Pretty much empty, pretty much open to whatever's going to happen. And then from that authentic state, we start to build a quality of our mind to feel safe. And that's our ego. It's it's the part of our mind that learns from our parents and our siblings what things are dangerous and what things aren't, what the names of everything is, and what our preferences should be or shouldn't be. And we start to label and name and categorize and package and forecast everything in the phenomenal world around us so that we don't feel completely groundless in this wide open universe that we've been born into. So, from that open, empty state, we start to package everything with our mind, and we start to take everything in so that we learn to fit in. We have to fit in with our parents so that we get fed and we feel safe. We have to fit in with our siblings so that we have the same thing. Then we have to fit in to school, our friends, our college, our work, and all of this organizing for safety, security, and survival pulls us away from our authentic self. We become certain characters. We develop certain personality traits. Some of them are like wearing a very tight fitting glove over our hand, and our essence, our uniqueness as a human being would be our hand, and our ego covers that with a glove so that we make sure that that essence fits into the culture and society and social structure around us. The older we get, the more we kind of lose track of our original gifts, our uniqueness, our our way that we would naturally express them, and we learn to conform to be able to fit in with others, school, work, everything, so that we can survive, that we get paychecks and can get food and shelter. We move away, unfortunately, from our authentic selves. The reclamation of our authentic self, from my perspective, is our life mission. And we have different ways that each of us might do that. It might be from reading and getting inspired by spirituality, religion, philosophy, poetry, even just reading a great secular novel and learning about the variety of different characters in the novel and the spectrum of being human helps us sort ourselves out and find who we are from that. Reflection and contemplation is something that every culture has woven in to help us decide what our values are that are intrinsic to us, to help us basically reflect on our essential nature, our talents, our skills, our gifts, our unique, in a way, purpose, and what we're here to give to the world. That has to come through time out. It can't come when we're busy going through university or busy going into our career. We have to create space in our life to drop, journal, read, reflect, contemplate the existential questions of life to figure out where we fit into that, to really dig into the marrow of our bones and find out what would I stand up for? What's a value that is so intrinsic to my being that I would march for it? I would fight for it. These are things that people who become more and more authentic through their life take the time to exercise. It just doesn't come with a pill. It comes through self reflection and self determination. One of the things that happens when we are determining who we are and we're exercising it, it is a growth through our life. It is, in a way, I kind of almost think of it as really a pilgrimage, our own personal pilgrimage to reclaim our authentic self in the most mature way that we can then offer it to the world through our adult life. One of the biggest things that we're wired for is to give of ourselves, because we are essentially a mammal that is used to belonging to a group for survival. We are tribal. And in a tribal situation, you can't be an isolated person. You can't be just completely narcissistic and self centered. You'll get banished. So we're wired for survival to give. Now, a lot of us are wired to give in our work, or a lot of us are wired to give as parents into family, or even as children to give to our parents. But there's other venues for us to give too. It could be just to somebody who's begging on the street. It could be through mentorship. It could be through volunteerism. It could be through work. But when it can't be through work, then we have to exercise it outside of work. Not all of us can have our purpose authentically line up with the purpose of the place we work for. Ideally, the culture of where we work supports us to be authentic, but if it doesn't align for whatever reason, and we need to stay with that job, we have to look outside of work for a way to give. And that brings fulfillment. That, that builds our self-esteem, because when we're reciprocating from all the things that we've received from childhood to this point by giving back to the society, to others, we feel congruent, we feel alive, we feel like we're a contributor. There's two aspects in purpose. Let me just go back a step. Is the motivational energy to give from our authentic self to the world. That's our purpose. Meaning would be the values and beliefs that are intrinsically potent within us. Our authentic self aligns with the values, our meaningful aspects of life, and our purpose is the way, the fuel behind us giving it. Awe, so beauty, falling in love with everything that's around us and within us, being like a child in that state of awe and gratitude are wired in our brain to release the same feel good hormones as serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, as a glass of wine and guacamole. But they're wired there again for the tribal need to survive. If we feel awe in the world around us, then from that place of connection to the beauty and the interconnectedness of life, we drop into thankfulness. That's the gratitude part. And that ignites in our brain those feel good hormones. So, getting out into nature, going to the opera, whatever it is we can do to instill beauty and a sense of interconnectedness to life and a sense of thankfulness for that participation to it, then fuels the third step, which is altruism. And that's the giving part. When we give selflessly to society, to family, to people we don't even know, we're back into that giving and reciprocalness of life. And again, we get the feel good hormones that bathe our brain. Those two things allowed us to be cooperative as human beings. The awe and the gratitude for that, and the altruism to give. We are actually wired, even though Darwin was misinterpreted, to be cooperative, not competitive. We are wired to be cooperative. We are wired for connection, not isolation. And this is why this pandemic has been so difficult for all of us, is because normally we would be rubbing shoulders with others. We'd be even in physical meetings at work with others. All of that interconnection that actually juices up that desire to give, to participate together, to make the best of something is harder to make happen when we're isolated at home and we only see each other on a Zoom screen. And so this isolation makes us feel like we're not in alignment with our authentic self and our purpose. It's hard to be aligned to purpose right now. Any questions so far that popped up, Alex?
Yeah, could you just repeat the definition of purpose, please?
Purpose is sort of the energy or motivation behind living an authentic life. So I wake up in the morning with this motto or vow to live my life for this, for these meaningful things that align to my authentic self. That desire to take that forward into the world is my purpose. My purpose is to give my best self in these ways because this is where I'm essentially authentic to the world. And I mean world in the biggest sense. It could be family, it could be neighbors, it could be your church group. And that takes me to the next point is when we're in purpose, because isolation takes us away from purpose, connectivity is what allows purpose to flourish, is we need to have community. So if you can't get it through this isolation that we're in, we need to reseek it after COVID settles. We need to reconnect with, volunteerism or church groups or community groups or service groups or start mentoring young people in your work or whatever it is that allows again us to reconnect with like-minded people and be able to give, because then the giving is so much more it's exponentially more powerful. Any other questions popping up?
Yeah, could you touch back on awe again and seeing beauty?
Yes. All of you know this, especially any of you that have come to Mountain Trek before, and think of a trail that we walk on and either the water flow or the bird song or the fresh, like I was hiking this morning for a quick hike up Elephant Mountain, and the avalanches lilies just popped out this morning. Beautiful little yellow avalanche lilies along the trail side. And then two flickers flew down onto the trail and just looked at me for a moment and flew off. They're a form of woodpecker. It's those little moments where we go, oh my God, this is like, this world is so beautiful. It's the tiniest little things that remind us about how unbelievable this universe is, this earth is, that other people are. That awe awakens us out of the mundane and reconnects to a sense of joy, and a sort of, we feel it in our heart, and we feel that sense of interconnection to all of life. Beauty helps us interconnect to all of life. We need it. We need to be inspired because far too much of our day is in mundanity. So getting outside is always works for me, but I can also get a sense of awe from reading a beautiful poem and go, wow, I can really feel that. Or seeing a brand new baby. There's so many places and manifestations of beauty in the world for us to be awestruck by. And that awe breaks us from the trance. In that momentary recognition of those flowers or those birds, I'm out of my head. I'm fully connected to what's right there. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm fully present. And in that moment of presence that we have with something that's awe-inspiring, that's when we connect to our authentic self again. I want to just maybe touch in for a moment about work and how there's pretty much three basic mindsets that we may have at different times in our work, even in a day, but at different stages in our life as well. We could have a job mindset at work where we're kind of in just a flow and we're going there and we're getting the paycheck. We may be doing, a decent percentage of our authentic self is able to express itself through the work, but not fully. We're mostly there for compensation. Then there could be a period where we're in a career mindset, where we're working the ladder, we're looking for recognition or status, we're fighting for power or control, we're building our career, and we may or may not be fully tuned into our authentic self and our values while we're in that mindset. We might put them aside a little bit just as we're navigating through the career aspects of a job. The third mindset is aligning our purpose and being able to do that with work. And it doesn't have to be our life purpose. It could be just the way that we want to communicate with others. We have a standard that is authentic for us, and we want to be able to do that. Or it could be about our integrity, or it could be around leadership or mentoring, or how we problem solve with others. Do we do it collaboratively when we can? There's different ways that we bring in our purpose, our who-ness into work. But the bottom line is, if we're participating 50% or more in the job or career aspect of work, we are building alienation from our authentic self in our work period. And that alienation from our sense of meaning and purpose and our authenticity will eventually, we will not stay in the job. We will have job dissatisfaction. So to maintain job satisfaction, we kind of have to be fierce and fight for where we can bring our who-ness into work. Doesn't have to be completely aligned, or else we'd all quit and join some NGO. But we try to fit our authentic self in either communication or problem solving or any other way that we're interfacing with others in our workplace. Does that resonate for you folks? Because we give so much of our life to work, it's important. And it's no benefit to work someplace where you can't be more than 50% authentic because you won't be doing a good job anyway.
So, Kirk, what about the follow up chapter 2 work? What about going into retirement? Are there any specific tips for finding purpose in that chapter of life?
Yeah, I I go back to again. I've told you all before that anthropology was my major in university, and one of the things that I studied was centenarian populations. This is before National Geographic's Blue Zone study, and the populations were different. These were more historical analysis of the the Hunza Kuts and the Azakabans from Afghanistan and people like that. But if you go to the Blue Zones, National Geographic study, and you look at longevity, which is what they're looking at, the basic similarities across 5 populations on this earth where people are living 90s and into hundreds. Like majority of their population are hitting the centenarian mark. One of the things that these people have in common is that you work or give until you die. Nobody believes that you can golf your way to heaven. You have to be giving your essential gifts and self. You have to have purpose, is what they name it. You have to be able to exercise your purpose by giving your authentic self to the rest of the group. And those people live the longest. So when we prepare for retirement, which is a very new phenomenon, it's really only been around on the planet since World War II in the most industrialized countries in the world. We have to balance enjoyment, travel or leisure activities and things like that with giving. Because if we stop giving, we will dry up.
Kirk, in this line of retirement being a chapter towards the end, what about chapters that are interspersed? So sabbaticals, are these, what do you think of them? And are they good opportunities to take a step back and implement some of these things to find that purpose?
Yeah, I think, sometimes we come to a place where we choose a sabbatical because there's a moment of crisis. And moments of crisis in our life are actually important, even though we don't like them. It could be a health scare, it could be a divorce, it could be a job loss, it could be any number of things that's a moment of crisis. But if we use them as a point to reflect and ask ourselves those contemplative questions, am I on the right track? Am I giving my gifts? Am I able to live my purpose? That's where crisis can help us check into those things and then make a compass turn, align to our internal compass, and then make another choice rather than just being on like the treadmill of repetition and then still feeling a misalignment. So we could have those crises at different points in our life. We call them the midlife crisis or whatever, but they come and go at different times in our lives. And they're excellent opportunities to step back, pause, reflect, regroup, and then realign.
Kirk, I've got a question on that personally. So something I've been contemplating a lot lately is ownership. How do you take 100% ownership for everything around you? Because effectively, it's our own little ego bubble that we're living in. So if you have one of these midlife crises, let's say, um, you typically, I think, one would typically look for blame elsewhere to console themselves before moving on. So, what are your thoughts about how, if it is in this specific case of some crisis, how do you handle doing that self-reflection so that you can find authenticity and you're not just making yourself feel better with excuses of some external factors that caused this?
It's a good question, Alex. I think that aligning to our authentic internal compass is a practice. It's a lifelong practice. And we practice it moment to moment at work or in relationship with our loved ones. And it comes down to three aspects of mindfulness from my perspective. One would be to just notice the sensations in my body. So again, it requires stopping and then just checking in. How does my heart feel? How does my solar plexus feel? What am I noticing in my belly? And then the second level would be I feel this sensation in my heart or my solar plexus when I'm thinking about this crisis that I'm in or this crisis just happened. What emotions or feelings are attached to that body sensation? With curiosity. And journaling helps with this too. You might write down a couple of different feelings that are attached to that body sensation. And then thirdly, we can notice what thoughts are attached to those feelings. If we can pull back and notice the connection of those three, then we come back into our authentic self as a witness, rather than being unconsciously run by software patterns from childhood based around uncomfortable feelings in the body and uncomfortable feelings emotionally, and doing everything that we can to avoid them, which means kind of doing the same old. So that's where we become self responsible. And that's, I think, what you're talking about in terms of ownership is when we become responsible for our own experience, the sensations in our body, the feelings that are attached to them, and the thoughts that are also arising. That's when we get to be experimental and learn, wow, that's interesting. I'm feeling this when this happens. It doesn't have to be a life crisis. It could be a, an argument at work or with your loved one, and you get triggered and they get triggered. I'm going to take a moment. What am I feeling in my body? What emotions are arising? What thoughts are with those? What's it related to? The more we learn about these things in ourselves, the more we get down into who we are authentically. And then we can start to act more from there.
Kirk, it seems like a modern, or maybe it's a prehistoric adaptation um, of our ego is to shy away from authenticity. It's often easier to fit some mold or do what we think other people think we should do. Why is that? Why isn't authenticity the default?
Again, going back to that limbic social brain, part of our subconscious is the tribal brain that's wired to make sure we belong. So we're countering that in a way. The fear of not belonging, the thumbs down on all social media, and that's why those symbols are used. When you're not accepted, when you don't belong, when you're doing something that's misbehaving the norm or not good enough, that generates a fear from that limbic part of our brain. So for us to actually stand up to our internal compass of values and meaning and purpose, sometimes that's stepping away from the way we were raised or the way we were schooled or the way that our religion made us see the world, our ethnic values. And that's scary. That means stepping away from our tribal inclusive safety net to be ourselves. But when we think about the people that we most appreciate and admire in our culture and our society, it is the people that walk to that different drummer, that invent things, that push new directions, that challenge the status quo so that we kind of wake up to a dream that we might have been in around sexism or racism or any number of things that don't work anymore. We need people to be authentic, even though it might seem dangerous.
Kirk, following up with the tribal components, um, what if we actually prefer being alone as a means of self-care? Is that different than isolation?
That is a good question, because isolation almost has a sense where everybody has left us alone. A circumstance has made us feel alone, and our greatest fear in that aloneness would be lonely and left behind. But alone time, every culture has incorporated that in the past into a healthy way of self-resourcing. And that's actually something that in our culture right now we haven't been doing, because actually being alone without this soother that we've been gotten used to, is a little bit frightening. We are so used to having our mind flip from phenomena input to phenomena input, just to keep it busy so that we don't have to touch into places where we may not feel an alignment in our life, where we aren't aligned with our purpose, where we're disenfranchised from our authentic self. Alone time is critical for that contemplative, reflective aspect to check in to see, am I living my life, the life that I'm meant to live? If we're constantly busy, we never drop in, we never feel, we never notice. And that's when we're on the treadmill.
Kirk, in the same token, um, if we're reflecting so frequently, perhaps that means we're kind of pinballing and not making sustained progress in any direction. Something I think about is, where's the balance? It takes Malcolm Gladwell's, it takes 10,000 hours to become good at something. So you at some point need to stop reflecting in a sense of, oh, I need to do this. Oh, actually, I need to do that. Actually, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and dive in and put your head down. Where do you feel there's a balance?
Like, you're exactly right. Everything's in balance. So even outputting, whether it's at work or creatively or activity wise, is more what we do in our culture than dropping in, resourcing, reflecting, contemplating. I'm not saying that we should all just sit cross-legged and then nitpick the lint out of our navel to find our authentic self. But we're imbalanced right now. We're out of balance. We need to give ourselves a little bit true, uninterrupted drop in, notice, reflective time to just find that internal compass and make sure, oh, yeah, that is the path for me. On a more immediate level, we can almost trust. We have two decision makers. We have the executive functioning prefrontal cortex that weighs things in our life, weighs decisions, and takes and ponders and looks for the things that are the least separated for a decision. Then we have the gut reaction that comes from our basically our subconscious brain. It actually makes more decisions than this does. And people who are working on their authenticness, and they have a clear understanding of their values and their sense of meaning in life and how they're giving that through purpose, they can rely more and more on their gut reactions in the moment to moment decision making through the day, so that they don't have to stop, hold everything, and go into a deep meditation to make a decision. The more we're aligned, the more the decisions we make will be naturally coming from that authentic place.
Kirk, to that effect, the more that we're aligned to our true purpose, does that result in extra motivation? So if I were to rephrase that, if we're not depressed or not just exhausted from whatever, and we don't feel motivation, does that mean that we aren't aware of our purpose or are not moving towards it?
I would, I would, I would make a sort of a generalized statement and say that unfortunately, for the lack of contemplative and reflective time that we have in our culture that's honored and supported, that many of us are not in total alignment with our authentic self because we don't know it. And so this is where, when we're in our midlife and moving towards our retirement years, we want to start an investment into that. It doesn't mean once we're authentic or we're aligned with our internal compass that we never make mistakes. Quite the opposite. We're willing to be experimental. We're willing to make mistakes. We're willing to have losses and failures, but not be flattened by them, not be derailed by them, because we get back up with that energy of our purpose to go, okay, I just learned something, that I just made that decision from an inauthentic place, from an old program from childhood. And that decision might have been a poor decision, but I'm not going to beat myself up for it. I'm going to only make the decisions in my life from the most aligned place I can be in any given moment. And the more we resource ourselves with meditation practice, contemplative practice, reflection, journaling, the more we do, inspired readings, the more we expand that sense of what is our values and meaning and alignment for ourselves, the less we're going to make decisions from an unconscious place, a repetitive um, way that we've absorbed what we think we should be doing to fit into society based on what we've learned and what everyone around us is doing.
And it seems like those decisions also won't come with that friction or stress. If you're making decisions that are in alignment with your true purpose, you don't subconsciously second guess them or feel like there's some reason it shouldn't be happening.
Again, the more I notice the sensations in the body and the feelings that are attached to them and the thoughts that the mind is generating, and this comes through being still and paying attention, the more I notice when that compass is off, because I'll feel it in my body. When we make a decision that is not in alignment with us, you'll feel it in your body. If you pay attention, it's there. The body never lies. So it's really about bringing that sense of mindfulness about what I'm noticing my body. That's my compass. That's how I find my alignment to my compass. It's just about dinner time. Any last questions? I wish I could have heard more voices than Alex, but I appreciate that this topic is kind of a little bit edgy and personal, but I hope there's been a couple of grains of things to ponder for you from it.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your time.
It's so nice to see you all again and see your faces and read your names. And man, I hope we can open up Mountain Trek and you can all come and join us on the trails again.
Thanks, Kirk.
All the
We have
best, everybody.
little sales PSA before you go. We still have a few spots left for this Sunday's supper club. So our supper club is a community event like this where our chef Jillian and our nutritionist Jen, who I think you all know, join us and we all cook a healthy meal together. So it's community like this, but you're also in your kitchen cooking a healthy meal. We send you the shopping list ahead of time. It's quite fun. So if you guys are looking to spice up a dinner this coming Sunday, we have one of these and we still have spaces. If you're interested, just email me, alex@mountaintrek.com, and I'll send you info.
And you're allowed to have wine. It's not like at the lodge. It's a fun, enjoyable occasion.
Great. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take good care of yourselves, everybody.
Enjoy your night.
So nice to see you.
Alex.
Bye. Bye, Simone.
Bye.
You can just call him Pops now that he has 2 little kids.
Kirk, I like your background.
Thank you.
Are you in a new place or you just?
No, I just moved into my living room.
Oh, very nice. It's beautiful. I
good.
love it. Yeah. Great
Good,
decor.
yeah, good energy.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Alex.
Good thing, Simone. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you, Simone, Janet, Jimmy,
Janet.
Bye.
Lisa. Oh, so nice to see all of you guys.
I was at Mountain Trek for my first time ever.
Heather and Ed.
Jimmy taught me a trick that I won't share with every alumni here, but he taught me a fruit in the water trick.
What?
I'll never forget that.
What's that?
What?
I was so hungry. I was so hungry, and this was like day 2 or 3. I can't exactly remember, but Jimmy said, "Well, there's a bunch of fruit infused water over there, and if you just stick your hand in and grab a piece of watermelon."
I
I
like
don't
the story
know
of cheese. The Who Moved My Cheese? Because when I was on Mountain Trek, there was a guy who said, I didn't get the cheese. And I think somebody next door, the other guy got his cheese.
That's
Oh yeah,
precious.
there could be fisticuffs over that.
Yeah. Great.
Hey, Ellen, nice to see you too. And Ed, wow.
Great group tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having this back. I was missing this.
Sure. Yeah, I think we'll go once a month now.
Yeah.
I think that'll be the right frequency.
Okay. Sounds good.
It
Great.
was nice to get the email. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, your emails are great.
All right, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take good care.
Bye.